welcome to Cyber Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts, that's namely me, Rory Duncan.
Hey, and me, Christina Richmond. As you folks know, unless you're joining us for the first time, this podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. How are you, Sir Rory?
Thank you, Lady Christina. I felt better, I must say, although I had a snooze beforehand, which
that's good.
Our rescue cat woke me up by yelling in my face. So
it's the podcast time.
Yeah, literally, it's about 15 minutes before, and I've got a can of Iron Brew, which is heavily caffeinated, so I should be okay.
Good. Okay.
I just wanted to say it has actually happened. It has actually happened, Christina. We have been officially called Cyber Sidekicks by
Where?
On a LinkedIn post.
Really?
Yes. Either it was autocorrect and the person didn't change it.
And they're from the Ukraine. Our one listener from the Ukraine.
No.
Thank you.
No, this was somebody else. I won't name them because it's maybe slightly embarrassing. However, people loved it. They thought it was great. Cyber Sidekicks. That's us.
Well, that's lovely. Building a brand takes time. And, just to our listeners, we really enjoy having on guests who are sidekicks, guests who are the big muckety mucks.
Yeah.
We feel like we're the sidekick to them in that case. I think it's a very apt name, Rory. Good job naming us.
Well, there we go. I think it had a particular spin-off version, which is the psychic aspect, which maybe fits us better. I don't know. However, so there we go. So that was the chortle, the laugh of the day, but I thought it was quite funny that it suited us.
Oh, that's great. Great.
But how about you, Christina? How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm actually pretty good today. Nothing to report really, except that I go on holiday tomorrow, as you know.
Ooh.
And I'll be out for a few days, not for too long. No beaches in my future, but dear friends. I will get to see dear friends for
Excellent.
About 5 days. Yeah, I'll be back next week. Yeah.
Well, you very much deserve that, Christina, and certainly given how busy we're going to be in 4 weeks' time. Is it?
Oh, is it 4 weeks
yes.
now? Oh gosh, RSA.
And that was a segue into the discussion about RSAC.
Yeah, that was a very gentle segue, not obvious at all, Rory.
Yeah. Well, that's
RSAC 2026, 23rd to 26th of March. We're full. I can't believe how quickly our agenda filled up. We'll be covering all the latest and greatest, as we've mentioned, and we'll be sharing our thoughts as we go forward. One of the things we did last week was to have one of the finalists, one of the top 10 finalists for the Innovation Sandbox on, and that was Jordy AI. We had their Chief AI Officer, Hannah Darley, with us, and we dedicated the whole episode because it was great fun.
Yeah.
So I hope you've listened, folks, to that. Today, for this podcast, we're going to just chat a little bit about the Innovation Sandbox and the finalists, and then we'll pick up again next week with guests. Yeah. So what have we got? What were we talking about just before? I think we were talking about Fig security, right? Rory went to look for them. What did you find?
That's right. Not much at all. They are probably the most mysterious company in cybersecurity at the moment. Certainly the most mysterious as a finalist in the Innovation Sandbox, literally because nobody knows what they do. Well, I mean, obviously they do, but we don't. But they posted on LinkedIn, a lovely post. They were very happy to be approached by the Innovation Sandbox team, but we're not entirely sure what they do. They have done a few blog posts from last year, and we know who the principals are, but not much more than that, Christina.
Yeah, that's right. So this post by Gal Shafir, who's the co-founder and CEO, it was 2 weeks ago. He said, this was on LinkedIn, I didn't think the first post we'd ever share from the Fig security page would be this. We've been building in the dark for almost a year, planning for a launch of our brand in March. Then the RSAC Innovation Sandbox called. So they were called. Being named a top 10 finalist while still in stealth is surreal. So it's a cute picture of him with some of his co-founders. That's really pretty extraordinary, because you were mentioning that another company, Realm, has been around for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, right? all the other companies on the list, and including Humanix, Realm Labs have been around. They're not, they are established in some shape or form, which makes the job easier for us, because then we can ask them what they do. We had Hannah on from Geordie last week, and the others have got pretty extensive details on their websites about what they do. So it is odd to have a company like Fig, which is kind of so unknown to the outside world, on there, as well as those that have a clear kind of trajectory in terms of products or solutions or markets and so on. So that was a little bit odd.
Yeah, so here's what the RSA conference says about Fig, just since we're talking about them. Fig leads security operations resilience. Okay, so it's a SecOps AI company, most likely, right? So a SOC automation or SOC something. That's the first clue. It says keeping detection and response working through constant change. Fig finds and fixes broken security flows across the entire SecOps stack and lets teams quickly simulate and deploy planned changes. With Fig, change powers the SOC instead of breaking it. So yes, we'd love to have you on, Gal and team, and we're working to connect with you through some of our back channels. We're also looking to connect with Crash Override. We've got an email out to them, and a friend said on Slack, if Crash Override is not a direct hackers reference, I will eat my shorts. I said, oh dear. Love that, but don't eat your shorts, please. He said, well, that's if I'm wearing them. Oh, God. TMI.
Yes.
TMI.
Yeah. No, that's quite funny. Well, yeah. And that's interesting to know. Thanks for the information there. The Innovation Sandbox folk know what they do, which is good. What I thought was interesting about that was the fact, if you look at some of the other companies in the finalist list, that approach is mirrored elsewhere. So ZeroPath are also in the list. They talk about helping finding and auto-fixing business logic, broken authorizations, vulnerability dependencies, and even compliance violations. And then we've got Charm Security.
Right.
And they have a similar approach, and their focus is preventing and resolving scams and fraud in real time. So again, about leveraging agentic AI.
Well, we were talking last week about Humanix.
Yeah, Humanix.
So, similar to Geordie, right? Using psychology.
Yeah, there's that psychological approach. It's a combination of human psychology, behavioral analytics, which you would normally do with people, and then being very detailed about context in terms of authorization and task focuses. So Humanix uses, they say, conversational AI trained on human psychology, the point being to assess, detect, respond, and assure all interactions across the enterprise. So all of these companies are kind of moving one step closer to having a much more sophisticated understanding of AI and AI agents. Not just there are this kind of dumb non-human identity, but they are actually complex entities. They are kind of beings in their own right, and they need to be treated much more like we would treat humans doing tasks than just a service that is kind of repetitious and just purely automated.
Well, and to that end, there's a couple of identity companies in the mix. Glide Identity, next-gen auth platform built for AI, and Token Security, which was originally, people saw in the newsletter, my top pick for the Sandbox, but I don't know. Geordie really impressed me, so we'll see. Token, I think, is doing some great stuff around agentic AI, non-human identity kind of stuff. But then the psychological aspect that we've just talked about with Geordie and Humanix is really interesting. So we've named most of them, I think. Let me rattle off the names. You can find them on the RSA site. It's Charm Security, Clearly AI, Crash Override, Fig Security, Geordie AI, Glide Identity, Humanix, Realm Labs, Token Security, and ZeroPath. So folks, go check them out. And that's Monday that the Innovation Sandbox occurs. And I think it's going to be really pretty exciting. Yeah.
Let's do a bit of news then, Christina. We can zip through some of the headlines, but there's some interesting things going on out there in the world. Of course,
yes, let's do.
The first thing we have to talk about is M&A.
Now, as always, I mean, it's what, every other minute?
Yeah, I mean, the podcast is quickly becoming, the cyber M&A podcast almost. But we knew this was going to happen, and certainly as part of our kind of predictions for 2026, we knew that this is something that wouldn't come as a surprise given what happened in 2025. Are we operating as quickly as last year? Well, let's just wait and see. We've had quite a few acquisitions made already. However, to cut to the chase, Palo Alto Networks, our old friends there, are at it again. So this time, they've announced their intent to acquire KOI, that's K-O-I, in a deal reportedly worth $400 million. Now, that's not based on something they've announced, but it's certainly many companies such as Calculus, Globes, and others who are well known for making fairly good estimations have said the deal is valued at about $400 million.
Well, that's a 10x value almost, because they had raised only they had raised $48 million in funding. And they offer endpoint security platform. So interesting that Palo's going for an endpoint security platform.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting, and you mentioned the value multiplier, that was about 10x, right? It's interesting because had this been clearly presented as a .ai firm, the multiplication versus value probably would have been a lot more. I mean, we've seen 20 times, which obviously has alarmed a lot of people given some of the money that's sloshing around. So I think that's much more realistic in terms of a deal size based on value.
And also, had it been 15 years ago and it was an endpoint security platform, it would have fetched a lot more money then as well. But hey, that's not bad for a day's work, 10x. Yep. So good for them.
Yeah, so good for them. And just briefly, we'll touch on the reasons why they did this. Palo Alto Networks said it's buying KOI for its agentic endpoint security technology. So again, focused purchase. They're aiming to enhance their Prisma AIRS AI security platform and a Cortex XDR endpoint security solution, they say, to provide significant visibility into the AI attack surface to improve security policy and malware prevention. Now, there's a point about this, which I was reading about today, looking at what we just discussed, which was talking about AI agents, about context and governance and so on. The companies that we mentioned in the Innovation Sandbox are kind of focusing and doubling down on that agentic AI governance piece. By buying KOI, Palo is kind of buying that functionality or a piece of that functionality into Prisma AIRS, right? So it's buying it into its platform, looking at agentic endpoint security technology. So here we are, either build or buy. There's buying going on for sure. And here's a good example of why it's timely.
Well, and I just want to call out the blog that I wrote, was it last week, on Zscaler's acquisitions, Rory, because I think there is something happening where there's a dichotomy occurring. Zscaler is going more towards the logic layer, away from infrastructure.
Right.
And Palo and Microsoft are chugging along, building out, their security stack and making lots of acquisitions, but it's more at the infrastructure layer. So I think what's interesting there is that there might be an advantage for Zscaler because Zscaler already controls, the network access and the traffic flows. It's just interesting because we also see attacks, we also see agents, we also see a lot happening at the browser level. So I don't know. I think it's early days and we won't know, obviously, who wins that race for quite a while. But it's interesting to see the dichotomy occurring between infrastructure security. I'm not saying it's going away, so don't worry. It's not going away. But things are shifting in some realms, specifically with Zscaler's acquisitions, to show that they are recognizing that the logic layer is really an interesting place to control. And of course, it's already there. Somewhat of their focus. So just something I was noticing.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Okay. Here's a question for you, Christina. Okay. Would you select your AI tool of choice? Would you use it to generate a password for a very important login identity service or whatever that you've got? Would you do that?
Well, okay. I mean, full admission, I use a password manager today, and it randomly generates the passwords. I don't know if they use AI, so I hadn't considered this. I'm a little worried about that, especially if it's a very high value site. Would you? What do you think?
No, I'd never thought of doing it, because they always said, well, look, make something that is, a random collection of letters and numbers, or a long sentence that makes sense to you but wouldn't make sense to anybody trying to attack. So you've got an extremely long string to crack. However, a number of publications, including the Register, have been featuring a story which is about AI-generated passwords are not random. They just look that way.
Oh, really?
Yes. In fact,
oh dear, what could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Well, the AI security company called Irregular looked at Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, and found that all three of these Gen AI tools put forward seemingly strong passwords that were, in fact, easily guessable. They were seemingly complex strings that we know, but actually highly predictable and crackable within hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So some of the things that they're doing, so they gave them prompts to generate 16-character passwords featuring special characters, numbers, and letters in different cases, right? Classic stuff.
Okay.
The kind of stuff that would give you a strong password. And they all produced complex passphrases. However, when they looked to see how strong these passwords were, they found that all three chatbots produced passwords with common patterns. So if you were to understand those patterns and see where the patterns are, as a hacker, you could understand them quite easily and use that knowledge to then bypass or shorten the brute force approach. A couple of things that they found with these 50 random generated passwords: duplicates, sometimes exact, right? Yeah. Some where they were starting and ending with the same character. So start with a Y, end with a Y, as opposed to something that doesn't repeat. And then sometimes have no repeating characters at all, which, if you've got no repeating characters, it points to this is part of a much longer sequence rather than being random, right? So once you've used that characters, you have to use something else. So
yeah, the takeaway must be, don't do this. Don't use AI for password generation, right?
Exactly. LLMs are optimized to produce predictable, plausible outputs. It's incompatible with secure password generation.
Yeah, makes total sense. It's actually, I mean, it's a funny but not funny article, right? Because don't do it, folks. It's just enough said on that. I think, we talk about hygiene a lot on the show. And folks, if you haven't figured out your password situation yet, you really need to. And password managers, I think some of them are great. And I use one that has been consistent, reliable, and beneficial to my sanity for several years now. And a friend of mine who recommended it had been using it for over a decade. So anyway, look into those. Yes. Don't use AI.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about distillation attacks. And this is where attackers use a smaller, unauthorized AI model, and that is, quote unquote, the student, which is trained to mimic the capabilities and outputs of a larger, more sophisticated model, or the, quote unquote, teacher. By prompting it with massive amounts of data, this process allows our lovely adversaries to steal intellectual property or bypass export controls, and replicate advanced AI performance at lower costs. So folks like DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax have been identified by Anthropic. So 16 million plus exchanges across 24,000 fraudulent accounts extracting Claude's agentic reasoning, its tool use, and coding capabilities. Now, GTIG, Google's threat intelligence group, also found the same pattern against Gemini. 100,000 plus prompt campaigns targeting reasoning trace extraction with real-time detection and disruption. So, first of all, what stands out to Chris Hughes, who's the chief strategist over at Zenity, is that the technical sophistication is significant. So these aren't, hackers in a hoodie or researchers running a few queries. These are coordinated operations using proxy networks with 20,000 plus simultaneous fraudulent accounts, load balancing across APIs, and pivoting to new models within 24 hours of release. It signals obvious use of AI to be on the offense, right? So it's the convergence of AI IP theft and AI-enabled offensive operations. Yeah. And Chris is saying, folks, this is a wake-up call. Yeah. And so beyond distillation, this also shows us that it is state-backed actors. It's the PRC, so China, it's the DPRK, it's Iran, it's Russia. Yeah. And they're using frontier AI to accelerate their entire attack life cycle, from recon to phishing to malware, but they're also stealing IP from the biggest models here that are stateside.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's scary stuff. It's scary stuff. I think one of the points that Chris was making, or his summary, which is a really good summary, is this has implications for things like using AI to create bioweapons, which is there are no exactly. The distilled models don't have those guardrails in place. Right. The most offensive of the cyber attacks that can be done, surveillance and so on. And it's very timely, given I've just been reading through CrowdStrike's 2026 Global Threat Report. Just before we came on air. Their reports are always really good reading, and the main report is like 50 plus pages, and they look at what's been happening and what they see going on in the threat intelligence space. And a lot of what they've covered this year is about China. So from a China nexus perspective, a lot of what CrowdStrike talk about, it's the kind of thing that we've had other guests talk about in the past. The Chinese Communist Party's approach to intelligence gathering is collect everything.
Well, it might be useful. Very socialist or communist viewpoint of it belongs to us anyway. It's part of the human race.
Everything,
why not?
But also collect everything. You might not be able to do anything with it now, but you might be able to decrypt it or use it later. But to that point, for them, it would work perfectly by using a model that didn't have guardrails. So CrowdStrike say, yep, they are potentially going to maintain their high operational tempo. It's about targeting edge devices, stealth tactics, internet-facing appliances. And CrowdStrike goes on to say that they're going to be continued to target telecoms, financial service, and logistics entities.
Interesting.
And that's a kind of a direct reflection of what we've seen in different parts of the world during 2025. I would recommend, folks, that you have a look at the CrowdStrike report. I think you just have to put in, your business email address and name and have a look through. When you get to the conclusions, it's worth, if you're stuck for time, go to the conclusion section. It's only 2 or 3 pages long, and it's got some really good recommendations. The first one being secure AI to reduce emerging business and operational risk, right? Secure that AI, reflecting.
Easier said than done, though.
Well,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. But it's very much, we've seen this reflected in the theme of this podcast, but also others, securing AI. Then treat identity and SaaS as primary attack surfaces. And then thirdly, eliminate cross-domain blind spots to stop high-impact attacks. There are a whole bunch of other things in there. And it's really good advice, actually, based on what they found. So recommended reading. Be careful, folks. We have bad nation-state actors wanting to get our stuff.
Well, and the thing is, with these distillation attacks, they can actually bypass U.S. export controls, for example, on advanced AI chips.
Wow.
Right? So they can also strip away watermarks identifying where they got this information from. So
yeah.
I don't know what the solution is here for distillation attacks, but I like the recommendation from CrowdStrike just in general around AI and where you should be looking first for vulnerabilities. So good work there. Yeah. It also must be threat report season because I've gotten a note from IBM that their threat intelligence index is out and Expel that their annual threat report is out. So we've got lots more reading.
Fine. Good. Well, it's great to hear about the IBM one. That's always a great read and is, one of the more popular ones as well. We certainly have talked about it quite a lot on a podcast from last year. Great. Well, thanks for that, Christina. Sobering stuff, but at the end of the day, this is why there is a cybersecurity industry and why we have defenders as well as attackers and why we have CISOs and security teams and SOCs doing the great work that they do.
Well, and it's job security, although that's just a piss poor excuse, right? I mean, you'd hope that we could figure this out 20 years ago, but no. Anyway, here we are, and things are evolving and accelerating quite rapidly, as usual. Yeah. So listen, I think we should leave it there for the day. We'll give folks just a quick podcast this week. Look forward to having our guests that we're teeing up for the coming weeks as we approach RSA, and maybe even have someone on from one of the finalists on our video podcast of the show.
Yes.
Okay.
Hair and makeup, everybody, and that's
hair and makeup.
Yep.
I don't know. I think we're off the hook for that because we're running left, right, center, sideways. And there's quite a lot of wind often, and especially in March, it might be rainy and cold. So, hey, if you arrive with hair flying, it's okay. Well, we'll tap it down and fix you up as best we can.
Well, I wish I had enough hair that could fly, but sadly not.
Sadly, no. Then hair and makeup for you is easy.
Yeah, I know. That wouldn't make much difference anyway. So that's what, as my wife says, it's too late.
It's too late.
However, I have my age repair defense cream, which will be the main thing I shall have.
Well, thank goodness for age repair defense cream. Okay, before we devolve into absolute rubbish, we hope you have a wonderful week ahead. We hope you join us again next week. And you can reach us at Christina@richmondadvisorygroup.com
and Rory at richmondadvisorygroup.com. Thanks for joining us. Hope you found this episode interesting. Feedback is always welcome. And with that, we hope that you can join us again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.